Hello, Mark. Delighted to be chatting with you. How are you, sir?
I am extremely well on a very muggy day here in Malta.
Sunny Malta.
Not quite so sunny today. No, we've had a lot of rain recently, but not as bad as usually on the west coast of northern England. But anyway.
Mark, for most of these chats, I have to do a lot of digging, searching, doing a bit of research on people, but not so with yourself.
Really?
Yeah, your website.
You found all the fibs and
everything
on the internet, have you?
It's an open book, your website. It tells you all about what you do, what you've done in the past, and the easiest research I've ever done.
Oh, well, that's good. Well, that's down to my wife. She's very good at things like that.
Oh, yeah.
It's quite a good website, actually.
Superb. Yeah. Is it your wife that updates it?
Yeah, she does everything. She updates it, nags me. Just gave me a kicking for being late on this call. So,
okay, yeah, no problem at all. Yeah. Before we talk about the main focus, the novel Fallout, so tell us what you do for fun. You still driving fast cars and doing cooking?
Yeah. Well, I noticed the poor guy from was it Apple got fired for quoting from Arthur. Did you see that?
Oh, talking about the robots. Conversations.
No. There's a very famous line in Arthur where somebody says to him, "What do you do?" And he says, "I race cars, I fondle women, but I have the weekend off, and I am my own boss." So there's a show about people in very smart cars, and this guy was in a very, very smart supercar, and somebody came up to him and said, "What do you do?" And he quoted the thing from Arthur, and he's been fired.
Oh, wow. Why?
I mean, come on. The guy was
ridiculous.
I was joking. I know. But anyway, yes, I fondle women, I race cars, but I have the weekend off. I still play with cars. I was at Goodwood at the Revival 2 weeks ago.
Oh, yeah.
Normally we love to travel as well, but it's been a bit off recently. Cars, scuba diving, cooking.
Yeah.
Usually following my wife. She's much more adventurous than I am, but she jumps off mountains and things. But we were up in Annapurna a while ago, and in Nepal, and she decided she wanted to jump off Annapurna. So unless I was going to be labelled a pussy by everybody else, I had to follow her.
Whoa, no way. I'd be dizzy thinking about that. But Mark, looking back at your CV and your IMDb, you've got a fantastic amount of work over the past 35 years on film and television. What would have been the highlights of those years for you?
Well, I suppose, I used to work in the city in London, and then
Lloyds,
I made
Insurance?
I worked in Lloyds. I did Kidnap, Ransom Insurance and Extortion Insurance, believe it or not.
Sounds like a spy.
And I swapped that, and it's a long story which I won't go into, but I left doing Kidnap and Ransom and went to work for the Muppets. And I was incredibly lucky working for what was then the #1 show in the world. And that was a blast. I don't think I really worked that hard. I made amazing friends. The lady who was my PA, Sophie Turner-Lang, went on to become the most powerful woman in media. She was managing director of Sky, and then she went on to be CEO of Endemol, which is the largest production company in the world. There was another guy there who went on and did Bob the Builder. It was an amazing alumni of people who, I'm the failure, but everybody else went on and did amazing things. And I'm very good friends with nearly all of them now. Even however long it is, 40 years later.
Yeah. Well, would you say that was amazing, that the buyout of the Hallmark Channel that you controlled?
That was probably a bit of a mistake, really. I was meant to be a stalking horse for NBC, and at the last minute they fell over, so we actually ended up buying it. And then NBC thought about it, and a couple of years later they bought it off us. So, but it wasn't really. I can say this now, but at the time we were really the stalking horse. But you know, we had Providence and 3i behind us, and Rothschilds were helping us, and we raised whatever it was, $250 million to buy it, and then it got sold on.
Yeah, that is amazing.
It's you know what, when you look back on things like that, you know, it can sound very trite. You know what, if you get the numbers right, you know, nothing's that difficult. There's lots of money out there to put into businesses. You'd be surprised. They're all looking for a safe home. I mean, that's the difficulty. But you know, there's plenty of money in the marketplaces to put into new businesses. I mean, I've started 2 or 3 since I stopped producing for Sky and NBC and BBC and ITV and God knows who else. And I raised money on a quite a big CBD business that's about to go public. But we raised 10 million in the open market.
Okay.
You know, you can do it.
Yeah.
You got to be charming.
Oh yeah. So what projects are you working on? Film and television projects at the moment?
Well, I'm not really. You know, with superb timing, I finished 2 miniseries for Sky actually at the sort of 2012. I did Treasure Island with Eddie Izzard and Donald Sutherland and God knows who else. Everybody was in it. Philip Glenister. I decided I wanted a break just at the time when drama took off, and I would have made zillions. But I just wanted a change. I've never really done anything for too long. I mean, yes, I worked in the entertainment business for 35 years, but I've worked in distribution. I've worked in finance. I've been a producer. I've worked in television, film, miniseries. I've been involved in the music industry with Neneh Cherry. So I've always moved around a bit, and I just thought it was time to do something else. So yeah, I founded a CBD company. I invested in a couple of digital companies in the United States. I wrote a book. I'm now writing the sequel. I've sold the rights of that to quite a well-known producer in Hollywood that I can't mention.
Brilliant.
And you know, who knows what's going to happen next?
Wow. Do you know what? You just answered the next 3 questions I've got lined up. First one, have you got a screenplay version of Fallout?
No. No. There are disciplines and then there are disciplines. I think in the book itself, there are, because it's about a screenplay, there are screenplay extracts in it. But writing a screenplay is a totally different discipline than writing a book. And while I'm dumb enough and arrogant enough to think I could write a book, writing a screenplay is such a discipline that you really need to be on your game to do it. So we're looking for someone to write the screenplay. Also, to get anything away nowadays, there is no independent cinema. It would never be a movie. It's always going to be a sort of 8 to 10 hour adaptation on Amazon or Netflix or Hulu or whatever. The way that television works at the moment, it all boils down to what they call the showrunner. The showrunner is either the writer or will find the writer. So even if I wrote a screenplay, it would only be used as a signpost. It would never be used as a screenplay. It's very, very difficult exercise. People think it's easy. It's a bastard.
I've had a go myself, and it's, as you say, it's a totally different discipline. It's under the same umbrella, I suppose, the entertainment industry, but it's as different as a joiner to a bricklayer.
Yeah, I think the problem with it is that, first of all, you're very tempted to give too much direction writing a screenplay, and you really don't. It's the director himself. If you have to say close up or you have to say full focus, you know, if you do it 3 times in the screenplay, it's too many times. And people make the mistake of writing direction into it. And as I said, it's a completely different discipline. Although, having worked with screenwriters for years, I use a lot of screenwriter guides or whatever you want to call it in a book. I mean, I always come into a scene very late,
Yeah.
which is typical of writing a screenplay. You know, character is action. You don't have to explain why somebody does something. If you've got the character right, it's always there in front of you. Why they're doing it. And dialogue, you know, again, actually writing a book, as I'm sure you know, probably the most difficult thing is dialogue, because everybody writes dialogue as written, and it's not, it's spoken. And every time I do it, I have to stop and read it out loud and go, no, you never say that.
Yeah, each character needs to have their own voice, don't you know, their own sort of mannerisms, their own way of speaking.
They do, their own syncopation, their own beat, their own shorthand. We all talk in shorthand, and it's a very common mistake. I'm not saying that I don't make mistakes, but at least I know what they are. But getting dialogue not to sound like dialogue in a book is a huge pitfall.
Yeah.
So that I learned from working with screenwriters, you know.
Okay. Tell us about the book itself without giving them too much away. I've started reading it, and it does start off as a screenplay. You got the list of characters there on the opening pages before the epilogue.
Yes, I do that, and now people are starting to copy me. I do that because I have quite a lot of characters in my books, and it used to drive me nuts having to go back, and when you're starting the story, you haven't got into it, and you never know who anybody is. So at the beginning of my book, there is a cast list of who everybody is, and a one line as to what they are, so that when you come across somebody, you go, basically, the story, it's really a story within a story within a story, but essentially, the story is about a screenplay that gets sent to 5 very distinct people before it goes out to the agent. Sadly, the screenwriter is killed. And the 5 recipients are all connected to a movie that stopped shooting 25 years ago. And eventually they begin to understand that within the screenplay they've been sent, which is a thriller, is the answer to why their movie of 25 years ago suddenly stopped shooting. And actually, although the story opens within the film industry, it actually reveals one of the greatest crimes of the last century that very few people know about. Most of the stuff in my book is 100% correct. If you look at the bibliography at the back, and even the fiction that I weave through it, references to movies and certain aspects about movies or financing them or doing this or doing that. They're all real, which is why I was very lucky that I got a lot of reviews from people with it, Oscar-winning producers, Emmy-winning producers, actors, who all said, you know what, this is real. This is obviously written by someone who's hung around for a while. So it's the first of a franchise. There are 2 main characters in it. I'm halfway through the second one now. So yeah, I'm not comparing like for like with Dick Francis, but the idea is to use movies as a backdrop. Use it by somebody who really knows about it, and then you peel back and there's a crime that is really nothing to do with the film industry.
It's like John Grisham, I suppose, as well. I know the legal industry.
Yeah, that's right.
Dick Francis, horse racing.
It's the framework, but it's not the picture, if you see what I mean. But if you just started it, you know, it quite quickly goes into the segment about the actual screenplay itself. But it's a kind of Get Shorty meets Da Vinci Code. There are lots of clues that you suddenly start to understand in the screenplay.
Yeah.
And like a movie, it's set all over the place. I mean, this I've been to 120 countries, so I love to put in details of places where perhaps people may or may not have been. Obviously, there's Beverly Hills, but there's the Philippines, there's Murren in the Alps, there's the Cannes Film Festival, which I've been to more times than you can shake a stick at, and people find interesting. They go, well, what that actually goes on there?
Yeah.
In my case, we have a murder, but the actual apartment it takes place in is the apartment I used to hire, and Warner Brothers. I hired it for the TV festival, and New Line, which is part of Warner Brothers, used to hire it for the movie festival. So all the glory about this apartment, which has got a glass wall, so you can see people jumping into the swimming pool. That's all real. Nearly all of it is real.
All authentic.
All authentic.
Yeah. Are you the Marcus Riley? Is that based on yourself, the producer character?
Oh, yeah. No? Yes and no. He's much braver than I am. He's probably as dumb as I am. He's not the smartest guy on the planet. I was very determined to do a two-hander with a woman, in this case, a woman whose nickname is Mako, who's a Chinese-American woman who is actually much smarter than Marcus. But she has her own baggage, and it is a voyage for the two of them. She brings out the best in him, he brings out the best in her and changes her as they go along. But it's not unheard of, but it's quite unusual to have a two-hander when they're balanced. Normally it's Holmes and Watson, or it's it's Miss Marple and whatever his name is, or in this case they're very equal, which means that they can make mistakes and get things right, and the reader's never quite sure. Holmes never gets anything wrong. These two get things wrong, and they get things right. But they're fun characters. There's a lot of characters that are based in truth, but I can't tell you who they are. I get sued.
That's a brilliant premise. Can I ask you, how did you connect with your publisher, Bloodhound Books? Did you send them what you were writing, a draft of the novel?
Actually, it wasn't. There was another publisher who published it first, and then they sadly got eaten up by COVID. Bloodhound came along, put it on, and I'm not sure what's going to happen next. I hope they take the next one. We've got quite a lot of traction, funnily enough, in Canada. It's a long story, but the next book is actually, some of it's going to take place on the west coast of Canada. And you still keep your fingers crossed that the option gets taken up. I mean, there is the sea change going on at the moment. It's very interesting in the thriller business in the movie world, because in the last 15 years, the biggest change was Seven. And when the movie Seven came out, the thrillers became very dark, the protagonists became very tortured, whereas before it was more like Lethal Weapon. And all of that genre disappeared. It just went. And then out of the blue, Netflix did a silly little movie with Adam Singer and Adam Sandler, and Jennifer Aniston, which was
they go on the cruise. That one,
stupid little movie. One of the most highly rated movies Netflix made last year, and it has completely reversed that genre again, and it's moving back into the much lighter tone. Funnily enough, Lethal Weapon as a TV show was a disaster, but Gibson and Glover are coming back now to do a movie, which would never have happened 5 years ago. Never. So there is a change going on. I think it's because we're living through slightly depressing times, what with the banking crisis, COVID, Ukraine, and people now don't want deeply damaged protagonists. It'll be interesting to see how it spins out. But Top Gun is a perfect example.
I watched that the other night. Do you know what? I had reservations watching. I thought, yeah, whatever, I'll put it on. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. I really enjoyed it.
Well, the point about it is it's that, I mean, my two protagonists, they're not, but they're kind of based on Nick and Nora from those 1930s thin men. I mean, they're not, they're very up to date, but the banter between them is very much on that basis. Nick and Nora are very interesting characters because Nora was smarter than Nick, which in the 1930s was quite a eye-opening pairing up. But yeah, Maverick is an old-fashioned feel-good fantasy based in some sort of reality movie. And if you look at what I was saying about Seven, and
the darkness of that,
the darkness ran for 15 years. It took over everything. And now it's time for a change.
I think, but real life itself is dark, regardless of the fiction.
Real life itself is dark enough. I don't think you need to make it that much darker at the moment. But I mean, you know, everybody's viewing habits have changed, obviously, over the last 10 years, what with streaming and, you know, we're in a different world now.
I think as well in the UK that the price of energy now, I think UK will literally be becoming darker as people turn more lights off.
They will. Well, they'll turn the fire off, but they'll never turn the television off.
True, yeah. It's there. What is it? The opium of the masses.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, it's people are not going to let that little box go.
No.
I don't think they'll give up going to the cinema, but they won't give up the TV.
No, it's there. It's there for good. Mark, have you got a writing retreat? Is this where the room you're in now? Is this your back cave? Is this where you do your?
Yeah, it is a bit. Yeah. There you go.
That's a big size. Yeah.
All cars, which of course important. These are all the cars that I've owned over the years.
Wow.
And stupid things I've done, like skydiving.
Oh no.
But yeah, I do have to have a place to sit down and write in. I don't know how you write. I hate writing. I love editing. So the first draft of anything is garbage. It's really putting an idea down, and then you go back to that rough piece of marble and chip away at it until you've got something that you're happy with. That's how I work, which means that it takes me forever. It's kind of like shooting a movie. You know, you shoot 90 seconds a day, even though you work 10 hours a day. For me, it's about the same. But I don't have a plot in my head fixed. I start. Do you?
No, I have to have bullet points for each. Yeah, the whole plot sort of in an Excel spreadsheet within 9 blocks. Each of them, you know,
really?
Turning points happens at this point here. It all has to be mapped out for me. But then again, saying that, the characters themselves, when you know your writing's really good, the characters come alive and move off into a different direction.
That's exactly what happens. That's exactly what happens. I have a rough idea of what I'm doing, but I'm always surprised at the end of the day where it's gone. My wife drives me nuts because she reads and she says, "What happens next?" I have no idea. What do you mean you got no idea? You must have an idea. I said, "Look, I know roughly what the story is, but as to plot lines and you know, and as you say, it's very much like doing the knitting. It's knit one, purl one, stitch one. If you drop one, you're fucked." I mean, when I was working on movies, of course, it was all the 3-act paradigm. All movies, well, not anymore, but all movies basically folded into the 3-act paradigm. The first act was always over a long period of time, and it set everything up. Second act, usually more compressed in time as to the main action of the piece. Third act, denouement, always current time. And nearly every movie was done like that. When I used to work on movies, we used to have a board up with the 3-act paradigms in it, and then you would change around scenes in it. And then Tarantino came along and said, "Fuck that."
Messed it up.
He took the last scene of the movie,
Yeah.
and he made in the third act, and he put it in the first act, which is
Pulp Fiction,
the scene in Pulp Fiction, right?
Yeah.
And he completely turned everything on its head. And then Guy Ritchie did the same thing. And anyway, sorry, I'm preaching to the converted.
No, I'm enjoying it. I'm getting an insider's point of view as well. But, we've connected on Twitter. Do you use other social media for promotion for the Fallout novel?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
My wife does for me. Unfortunately, the world we live in now, the first thing publishers ask you is how many thousands of followers on XYZ. So yes, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok.
Yeah.
And then I have my own blog, which I've been writing now for, God, it must be 8 years, I suppose, which is in 40 countries, called andanotherthing.com.
I've been reading it. It's superb. As I mentioned at the beginning, your life's an open book. We know everything about you.
Well, as long as it makes you laugh. But I've been doing that for a while, and that they get very excited about, because they go, "I can't believe you're in 40 countries." Then they go, "I can't believe you charge for it." And I go, it's just too much headache. Charge for it. But no, we're on all platforms, and then they all have their different skews as to what they like. In fact, I just was doing some filming today for I can't remember if it was TikTok or Instagram. My wife will no doubt scold me after this interview by saying you can't remember which is which, but it's a curse. We have to do it.
I can't get my head around Instagram. I use Facebook and Twitter. Well, that's enough for me. Yeah. What advice would you give to a new writer?
Right.
Get on with it.
Write what you know, and if you don't know it, be bloody good at making it up. It's anything to do with the arts. If you want to do it, don't talk, do it. I have my nephew. This is a segue to the end, but it's a good story. I have a nephew of mine. His photograph's actually over there. He decided he wanted to be a fashion designer. Then he wanted to be a director. And then he decided he wanted to be a photographer. His mother's a very, very talented amateur photographer. I said, if you want to photograph, then whatever you do, don't talk about it. Go out and take photographs. It doesn't matter if it's for a shitty little brochure, or just do it. And sure enough, 9 months later, he said, look, I've been asked to do a shoot. Could we borrow, I had a lightweight E-Type at the time. Could we borrow the car? Because I've been asked to do some photographs of kids around a classic car. I said, fine. One of those kids was Cara Devine, or Develine, or whatever her name is. He makes 20 grand a day as her photographer. Those photographs are what got her first job. Brilliant. And she keeps him as his. So now, if he turned his nose up at that and said, I don't want to do that because I'm not getting paid anything. And it's the same in film and television. Take any job you can. And if you want to write, just go to write. You don't have to, in my case, you don't have to know what the ending is. You do have to know your facts. With the internet now, you can't afford to make mistakes.
True. That's true. Yeah. I know in the past, for fines and things, I had to go and ask a librarian, and they take me to the reference section and point out a particular book. But in Google now, you've got everything at your fingertips.
You got everything there, everything, and I use it all the time. I needed to understand the rules of Go on a scene in my last book. Normally it would have taken me a day. Now it took me 10 seconds to pull it up and work it out. So there's no excuse now. But write what you know, and if you don't know it, be bloody good at lying.